first floor because the first floor gives access to the street. And in the middle of the night, this woman was attacked by a man who climbed through the window and sexually assaulted her. And I started working on this case. We had DNA evidence, but we'd never been able to identify a suspect. I used a new technique, forensic genetic genealogy, which is the technique that was used to catch the Golden State Killer. And I was able to work my way down the family tree over the course of more than a year and a half. And in the end, we were able to find a suspect, and we matched his DNA, and we knew we had the right man, and we could not prosecute him because at that time, the statute of limitations in Massachusetts for aggravated rape was just 15 years. And I went to the incumbent district attorney, and I asked her to speak out and call on the legislature to make a change, and she said no, she wouldn't do that. She said not everyone would agree, and I felt like that was the wrong answer for the district attorney. The right thing to do was the right thing to do, and I wrote a letter of resignation and I resigned. Only after I resigned, only after 3 months after I resigned, and my campaign website went up and said, this is something that has to change, only then for the first time did she ever speak out and call for the reform of the statute of limitations. And I'm glad she changed her mind, but I think people have a right to ask, what changed about the right or wrong of the statute of limitations for aggravated rape between February, when I asked her to change, and December, when she finally spoke out? And the answer is nothing. And one of the things that really bothers me is, in the 10 months that passed there, even when the law changed, which we have changed it now, none of those victims can ever get that time back. The Constitution does not allow us to give them that time back. So everyone who lost the opportunity to get justice in their case, they lost it for good. I think that's wrong.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like Joe said, I have 2 retired police officers.
Johnny Guilford's case up in the Rogers Street area.
You know, so
Horrible. I heard the details of that. It was just a horrible thing. And they ended up solving it through a cold case, and it was in the little Sunbig thing about it.
That was under the Rogers Street Bridge?
Yes, it was.
The murder of Gary Melanson, and I was the prosecutor who indicted that case.
Yeah.
And we have alleged that the man who did that also killed a man in the city of Cambridge 2 years later, also a homeless man. So serious crimes that deserve attention. And that was my mission as chief of the cold case homicide.
I remember reading about that. That wasn't too long ago. Yeah, I remember doing a dive on that, and I remember now the Cambridge homicide as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna read a couple of texts because I like to make sure that my people get their voices heard, and then we'll dive in a little bit more into that, and the campaign and everything that you have going on. So, going back to what we were talking about earlier with the schools and what's going on in Burlington, parents should always have the option of opting out of particular programs. Totally agree with the Burlington parents. That survey does not belong in a public school. Makes me wonder about how the superintendent would allow it into their classrooms. Yeah, they are not using that program anymore. I think I solved that problem, but somebody texted in if you could get a little closer to the mic. You can just pull the mic right to you. I put it up. I put up your mic and Joe instead of his.
Okay.
That's what I said. That's why I like to wear the headphones, because I like to keep the audio monitored over here.
You got to be careful with my voice. Sometimes it goes right
Oh,
through
yours-
people's earphones.
Yours is lower than mine, we'll just say that. So Uncle Buck texted in and he said, I totally agree with Joe that independents are going to be the determining factor in both the midterms and in 2028. The Republicans are focusing on rehashing COVID, and Democrats keep putting up these wacko left-wing socialists as candidates.
Absolutely, Uncle Buck. Absolutely.
And then we had one more here. What happened to Fun Friday? No, when we had Fun Friday, you guys were saying what happened to politics. So we're doing a little bit of everything. Next week, I'm going to try to get Batch in here, and we'll have a Fun Friday. And you guys will probably be missing the political rhetoric and the banter.
But it also brings me back to when we're on our shows and doing things during the week, is that this is a very important time we're coming up to right now for the September election and the November election. There was 14 ballot questions that have been whittled down by means that no one can still understand what happened to them.
Craziness.
But it's down now to 9, and So there are people that are upset around the town, and we should bring them the most information that we can, so that people can come out to vote, and to vote the person they want there, and get as many people in, whether you agree with them or not, to have a chance to tell people in the Merrimack Valley who they are and what they're about.
Because I have limited time. It might not seem like it, but I only have certain days. And to be honest with you, when, I met David over the folk festival, and I was like, listen, I'm gonna reach out to you guys. I'd love to have you on the show. He's like, let's go. And we started talking, and Friday worked. I don't want to, next week's already booking out. And it's like, no, I'm not gonna miss the opportunity. And, I looked into him, and I seen his hand out, and I was like, why would I not have this gentleman on the show?
I appreciate your inviting me, and I agree 100%. A lot of people don't know that the election's so early this year, and especially when you live in Massachusetts, the real choice that voters have, even voters who do not always think of themselves 100% as Democrats, the Democratic primary is where a lot of these important choices are made. For voters in the Merrimack Valley, your district attorney is going to be chosen September 1. And you're allowed to vote in that election, even if you are an unenrolled voter, which is what Massachusetts calls independence.
Dave, can you just tell us more about the job so that people usually, like you just said, don't know that you have an option to vote for your district attorney? Can you just quickly go through it and the reason you're running and for this job and and what it entails and why it's important for people to be aware of what your DA does?
Absolutely, I'm glad to do that. The district attorney is responsible for the prosecution of all crimes, state law crimes, in Middlesex County, which includes the entire city of Lowell and the whole Lowell region. That means crimes as relatively minor as trespassing or operating with a suspended driver's license, all the way up to armed robbery, rape, and murder. Virtually all serious violent crimes in Massachusetts are prosecuted in state court, not in federal court. Federal agents, federal prosecutors get a lot of press attention, but when it comes to serious violent crime, that is something that is done by state and local cops and by state prosecutors. And that is why the district attorney's office is so critical. The DA supervises a staff of more than 100 attorneys across this county, and they are in Lowell District Court and other district courts across Middlesex County, Cambridge District Court, Malden District Court, Somerville District Court. And those are the prosecutors that try the cases. Those are the prosecutors that make the decisions about how cases should be charged, how cases should be litigated, and the district attorney has tremendous power over which cases to prioritize and sometimes which cases to deprioritize. And so the value system of your district attorney becomes critical. The district attorney does not work for the governor or the president or the attorney general of Massachusetts. The district attorney is an independently elected official with their own power and the power to set their own agenda. So it's really important for voters to know that and to make use of their vote.
So here with us we have David Solet. They said that right this time. Solet.
It's solid.
I'm putting too much emphasis on the
solid.
So David Solet, and he's running for district attorney of the
18th Middlesex.
So if you guys have any questions, anything like that, make sure you text it in. I just want to say your name as much as I can, just so I can get it right finally, and so that people know who you are. And they, like you said, September 1st, that is a lot of these elections here. That's when they're going to be decided. Here in Lowell, we have 2 open seats and 1 incumbent. But what people need to understand that if you're waiting until November to vote and you don't see your candidate's name on the ballot, it's because you missed the vote.
If you skip the September 1 primary, there won't be any choice. You won't have a choice anymore for district attorney. And if you think that there's things that need to change about crime and fighting crime in Lowell, but not just in Lowell, in Drayton, in Billerica, the whole Lowell region is all part of Middlesex County, and it all is protected or not protected by the Middlesex District Attorney. That's why that job is so important.
I love when this happens. Somebody just said, who votes in the 18th, right as you were saying that. So it's 53 counties.
54 cities and towns.
54 cities and towns.
So if you're from Westford or Tewksbury, or Billerica, or Lowell, or Drayton. That's all Middlesex County, and you are all protected or not protected by the Middlesex District Attorney's Office. And so you have the right to vote, you have the right to choose who your DA is, and you do that September 1, the September 1 election.
And this isn't on the Democratic primary, which is what will happen September 1st.
Correct.
It is not just Democrats.
Right.
Can't
critical for
emphasize
people to know.
this enough.
Everybody knows there are more Democrats than Republicans in Massachusetts, but not everybody knows there are more independents than Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
In every single city and town in Middlesex County, including Cambridge, where I'm from, which is a famously Democratic area, there are more independents than there are Democrats. And it is totally up to those people whether they vote or not. And what I'm saying is, if you care about who's leading your county, if you care about law enforcement issues, you care about public safety, you have a right to weigh in there, and I urge people to do it.
You know what I also say? If you care about the establishment and an opportunity to break some of their power, go out there, change things. We've had people in positions for so long that they're set there and they think their way is the only way, and things are changing drastically in this state. And you might not believe your vote doesn't count, but it does count. Go out there. You have to vote. You have to participate. And there's an opportunity to change things with one candidate in one race that will change, hopefully make bigger changes down the road for the state.
And you are running against the incumbent,
I am.
Marion Ryan.
That's right. The incumbent has been in that office for more than 40 years. She has been in the top job for more than a decade. And I think it is time for a change. I think this office needs a reset. And the reason why is that the incumbent district attorney has not been willing to lead from principle on important public safety issues. Time after time, there have been obvious loopholes that any honest person would say need a change. And she's been unwilling to do that. She was unwilling to step up on the statute of limitations for rape victims. She's been unwilling to step up to give police and prosecutors the tools they need to protect people from drivers who are under the influence of drugs, which our state right now is terrible at prosecuting. Governor Charlie Baker worked hard to pass a law named after Trooper Thomas Clardy, who was a state trooper and Marine Corps veteran who was killed when a man leaving a dispensary with marijuana cigarettes in his car and THC in his bloodstream crossed 3 lanes of traffic and hit the trooper's stationary cruiser and killed him. And Charlie Baker worked hard to pass that law. Other Democratic district attorneys worked hard to pass that law, but the Middlesex district attorney did not, and it did not pass. And since that has happened, we have had more than 70% of those cases dismissed before trial even comes. And of the cases that did go to trial, in a 5-year period from 2020 to 2024, there were 43 cases, 41 were not guilties. That shows that there is a dire need for reform, or more people are going to get hurt. Every day in the newspaper, you see car crashes, you see stories about people driving the wrong way on the highway. In my opinion, that is in substantial part based on the fact that there are people that are under the influence of drugs, and your police and your prosecutors right now do not have the tools they need to protect you. That's something I want to do something about.
I see. I wasn't even aware of that. So thank you. I mean, we talk about public safety, but it's things like that. And that's why I was so excited to have you on, because, you know, we watch the TV shows and it's always, you know, go to the big boss, go to the DA, but to have somebody here that's, and you're clearly more than qualified for the job, and we can actually talk about things like that. Like I said, I never knew about that, you know, because of the 18th, we didn't get that law passed. Like,
I'll give you another example if you want. You know that when people are charged with a crime in America, the normal course is that they get booked, photographed, fingerprinted, and then released until their trial. And that's good, and that's normal. That's a core part of the American presumption of innocence. But there are a small number of cases that are so dangerous by their nature that it would be crazy for us to put somebody right back on the street after the police make an arrest. And in those cases in Massachusetts, what we do is called a dangerousness hearing. Mm-hmm. The district attorney gets to file a petition with the court, and then the court holds an evidentiary hearing to determine if this person is so dangerous they can't be put back on the street. since 2019, there was a loophole in our law here in Massachusetts that took away our ability to even ask for a hearing in some very, very serious crimes. What kind of crimes am I talking about? Cross burning, bomb making, or aggravated rape of a child. Right now, we do not even have the ability to ask for a hearing. And that's a loophole that when I worked for Governor Baker as the chief legal counsel to the Secretary of Public Safety, he worked very hard to try to close that loophole. He stumped around Massachusetts. You may remember at the end of his time in office, he actually cried at a press conference because so many victims of violence had asked him for help and he could not get the legislature to act. I believe he described that as the biggest disappointment of his time as governor. And when I went back to the Middlesex District Attorney's office, I said to the incumbent district attorney, she said, what should my legislative agenda be? And I said, the number one thing we need to do is to close the dangerousness loophole. If we don't do that, real people are going to get hurt. But she said she didn't want that responsibility because if she had it and we didn't use it right, people could be blamed. And I think that's the wrong value system for the district attorney.
We have a good amount of text here that I want to read, but we're going to take a quick break. And once we come back, we'll dive into that. All right, hang around. We'll be right back.
David, do you want to get into